Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So, the reason why I'm kind of laughing is I just recorded a session and I realized halfway through it actually wasn't recording because of issues having to do with storage. So now I have to re-record this podcast. So this might be a little bit shorter than usual, but I'll try to make sure it's still entertaining. Before I get started, please remember to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Please recommend it to your friends as well, and I really appreciate it. So I want to talk about Trump's W week. Trump had major W's this week. It's very impressive. Perhaps the best week of either of his two presidencies, certainly the best week of his second term so far. The first thing is he got these ceasefires done. He got a ceasefire with Israel, Iran. He got a ceasefire having to do with the Congo and I believe Rwanda, if I remember correctly. And there are reports that we may be getting a new ceasefire in Gaza, which would be another big W. What Israel's been doing in Gaza at this point is sort of undefendable. Just like October 7th was indefensible. But what Israel's now doing to Gaza is just, Israel's kind of gone out of control. We really need to rein them in. Hopefully, Trump getting a ceasefire and yelling at Bibi to turn back those planes that were going to drop more bombs on Iran after the ceasefire. Hopefully that's a sign that we're not going to continue to be controlled to some degree by Israel. Although Trump has been defending Bibi online about Bibi's legal issues, but the point is, even though it looked a little dicey at the beginning of last week, Trump got these ceasefires done, and he's keeping his promise of being the peace president, and it's great news to see. And the second thing that happened, which another huge win for Trump, is the big beautiful bill. It passed a big procedural hurdle to advance, and it looks like the bill will pass in some form. When the final form of the bill is passed and finalized, I will discuss the details. The main part of the bill that's most important is the Trump tax cuts being extended, because they're set to expire soon, and if they expire, almost everyone, including the vast majority of working class voters, would get their taxes increased. Obviously, we don't want that. So just based off that, we need this bill to get passed, the big beautiful bill. They keep changing different specifics of the bill. So when it's finalized, I will discuss the specifics, but I don't want to, talk in great detail about why this provision of this bill is so good or bad for it to be taken out, a day later. So, but the point is, we want those tax cuts extended, which is the heart of the bill. And the other thing that's related to this is we had Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina announced that he will not be seeking re-election in the North Carolina Senate seat that's up in this upcoming midterm. Now, a lot of liberals are trying to say that's bad news for Republicans and Trump because they think that's a prime pickup opportunity now for Democrats in the 26 midterms. I strongly disagree. First off, I've always thought North Carolina is a little bit overrated as a swing state. It's always been it's a Republican-leaning state. Democrats have not won it on the federal level in over 20 years, I believe. Democrats will win governor's races in North Carolina, but that doesn't mean much. Republicans will win governor's races in states like New Hampshire and even Vermont. But on presidential and federal elections, North Carolina is a very red-leaning state. Trump won it all 3 times. Mitt Romney won in 2012. The one time Democrats won it at the presidential level, outside of Senate levels, like I said, was 2008. And that was a great year for Democrats. It was the closest we've had to a full-on landslide electorally was Obama's 2008 win, and Democrats only won North Carolina by a couple thousand votes. I mean, just that fact sort of leads you to believe it's much more of a red-leaning state than a pure swing state. So I think this is a good opportunity for Republicans to replace the bum, Tom Tillis, and get a true populist Republican to represent North Carolina in the Senate. It could be lower Trump. I see some liberals trying to make fun of the idea of lower Trump running because they think, if there's a Trump on the ballot, it'll make Democrats come out in droves to vote against her, just against the name Trump. But I think of it in the opposite way. I think if there's someone with the last name Trump on the ballot, it'll galvanize Republicans to come out to vote. One of the reasons Republicans underperformed in the 2022 midterms was the fact there was no Trump on the ballot. So I think in North Carolina, if Laura Trump does decide to run, which there's evidence she's strongly thinking about it, that last name of hers, I think, would only help Republicans, not hurt Republicans. So I think this is a great opportunity for Republicans to replace this neocon establishment hack, Tom Tillis, with a true populist representative from a Republican-leaning state. Great opportunity. So I just see that as another Trump W, that Tom Tillis is retiring. It's great news. The other thing that's another Trump W was the Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court ruled that these crazy national injunctions that these local district court judges were implementing were largely unconstitutional. What was happening was you were having these liberal legal groups suing in these left-wing districts to try to get national injunctions to prevent the Trump administration from implementing their agenda. Instead of it just, these injunctions just impacting the districts or the states these judges were from, they were doing these national injunctions preventing it from being implemented anywhere. And sometimes you'd have contradictory rulings, like one judge would rule it wasn't illegal, another judge would rule that it was, and there'd be a national injunction. It was just crazy, and thankfully the Supreme Court ruled that no, unless it's like a class action lawsuit, or there's like some crazy high legal standard, you can't do these national injunctions. It can impact just the local district, or it can impact perhaps the state, but you can't just do this willy-nilly and force the whole country to have to deal with these crazy injunctions. That's a big W. That's how the left's been fighting it back against Trump this time. I mean, they did it during his first term too, but it's been their only way. In the first term, they still had these legal investigations like Russiagate to fight back against Trump. They don't have that this time. The only way the left's been able to fight back against Trump has been through these crazy lawsuits with these crazy left-wing judges. Because Republicans control the whole government, right? I mean, the whole legal system, frankly, needs to be totally changed. I mean, the legal system, except for the Supreme Court, was trying to basically throw Trump off the ballot and put him in jail before the 2024 election. They were totally conspiring with each other. That's why they kept rushing these decisions and trying to rush to get Trump to trial. The whole legal system just decided they were going to try to prevent Trump from being elected president. And they were going to try to do that by trying to prevent Trump from being able to get to the general and have the people decide. And if it had not been for the Supreme Court, it probably would have happened and Trump would have been in jail. I mean, these judges are insane. The whole legal system is insane. So we need major reform. And I think this is a great step by the Supreme Court. It's a good sign that the Supreme Court understands that the legal system has lost a lot of legitimacy. And it needs some pushback. And we finally got some with this recent Supreme Court ruling, written by Amy Coney Barrett, a justice I'm not the biggest fan of. It was the last justice Trump appointed before he left office after his first term. And she's had a lot of rulings that I haven't been a fan of, but this was a very good ruling. And it's going to make it much easier to implement President Trump's agenda. Now, the specifics of this actual case that the court ruled on had to do with naturalized citizenship. They didn't actually rule on the merits of that, but that was what the case was originally about. And I actually think the Trump administration is wrong. I think the Constitution, it's pretty clear that even if your parents are here illegally, if you are born in the United States, you are a citizen. I think that is the proper constitutional interpretation. But that should be decided nationally by the Supreme Court, not some district judge. So overall, W ruling. And like I said, it was a W week for Trump. Very good week for Trump. Hopeful, it looks like we're back on track. As you heard in my previous podcast, the whole issue with Iran and Israel was making me a little nervous. When Trump was tweeting about regime change, I was getting a little nervous, like, oh, is Trump going off the rails? But looks like he's back on the rails, and he had a great week, and I think this just helped bolsters the Republicans' chances to do well in the midterms next year. Especially, like I said, with Tom Tillis not running again. That's a W in my book. And yeah, so great week. And yeah, I think that's it for today. A little bit shorter just because I recorded this podcast earlier. So, well, tomorrow it'll be a little bit longer. So we'll be back on track. So anyway, thanks for listening. Please subscribe, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. I really appreciate it. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.